It is the 9th of the 5th, 2026. The time is 20 minutes past 8. And as always, that means that there are very many multitude of F1-centric threads at which we need to pull over the next 20 minutes. We normally go longer. It's Saturday show, but your boy's got ish to do. We'll talk about Schumacher, the timings, Indianapolis, 10 years on, as near as makes no difference. And Mick doing the exact time that his dad did. Oh, the humanity. So too, we'll talk about a Fernando Alonso story that Mercedes wanted him to join to replace the one that they call Sir Lewis, Carl, Davidson, Hamilton. We'll talk about Aston Martin and this ADUO nonsense in inaugural 10% Delta rule. What are we doing here, F1? Levelling for the competitive landscape. You get an advantage. No, you get an ADUO. What are we doing here? Is this Oprah? I can't tell the difference. So too, we'll talk about Scuderia Ferrari. People saying that there is a paradigm shift over there at Maranello and Fiorano. The one thing that they lacked for was a working culture that enabled mistake making. It was suffocating over there. Now, however, they are broadening and spreading their wings. So too, we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton and Ollie Behrman. Potentially, sooner rather than later, Ollie Behrman will be switched in for Sir Lewis Hamilton. A techier than techie won that. So too, we'll talk about David Coulthard, who says that Ferrari and Max are better suited than potentially Max and McLaren or Max and Mercedes, which is interesting. And then Mark Webber talks finally about a rising Max Verstappen tide floating all F1 boats. Well, duh. Let me show you this in the first instance. And I'll talk about some Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton fans, covers your ears because I'm about to talk some truth. Straight shooter settings, truth and objectivity settings. You recall Lewis said that he was at the factory. He was at Maranello in the sim, as near as makes no difference, every single week. But I'm not sure that's quite right. I'm not going to get the timestamps and cross-reference his flight paths. But I think Lewis Hamilton was enjoying himself. And as well he might want to. He's 41 years old now. Do you know what I mean? He's given enough of his career to Formula One, has Lewis Hamilton. I mean, how would I dare do such a thing as to deny him his Kim Kardashian-shaped happiness? Here's what TMZ recorded. Roll the clip.
Lewis! Can I get a picture? Lewis!
Techie chat. Techier than techie things. I hope he's happy. And you know what? If Lewis doesn't want himself an 8th, then I don't want it for him. If he's prepared to sacrifice glory at the red team with the yellow badge, then that's what it is. What else am I going to do? Orion, you're a legend. I appreciate you, mate. What is he going to do? Do you know what I mean? He's got a Charles Leclerc in the other car, a fire-breathing dragon of a Charles Leclerc, now in his pomp, in his prime, in his 10th year over there at Scuderia Ferrari, driving brilliantly. The points gap between Lewis and Charles currently rests at 8. There has been 4 races. Extrapolate that and you can do the maths. It will be a big gap towards the end of the season. But of course, you've got to normalise for the fact that Charles Leclerc had a big mistake in Miami. It would therefore be more than 8 points. But for that, a lot more. It's a trap, says Cannabis. Potentially, mate. Potentially. I mean, not too many sports athletes escape the Kim Kardashian or keeping up with the Kardashian blast radius. Mention no names. Lamar, Chris Humphries, Reggie Bush. Need I say more if past his prologue? But maybe Lewis is built from a different cloth. Maybe he's capable. At the ripe old age, maybe he can buck the trend that F1 is no country for old men, that Father Time is undisputed, pound for pound, has never lost the round. Maybe. However, the guys and girls over at Scuderia Ferrari are now speculating, talking about when they make the switch. You will be aware that there is a chap called Ollie Behrman who is well prepared, who is gathering pace, momentum, as far as the successor for one Sir Lewis Hamilton in that red car with the yellow badge and black prancing horse atop. Ollie Behrman's now said, I wouldn't be in F1 if I didn't think I was ready to replace one Sir Lewis Hamilton. There is steam kicking up now. Behrman said that it wouldn't even be worth racing if he didn't think he could beat Lewis Hamilton. He went on Sports Bible and confessed for the fact that he thinks Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time, Mount Rushmore of F1, first round Hall of Fame. And I would concur with that. If you're talking about greatness, then you're going to have yourself a Sir Lewis Hamilton conversation. But Lewis Hamilton, as of the past 4 or 5 years, has not been what he was pre-2021. And as well, you might expect that. But the question is this, chat, for which we will need to answer. When do Scuderia Ferrari press that Lewis Hamilton button? Do they persevere with him ad nauseum, notwithstanding his material underperformance versus Charles Leclerc? When would you press that button? Because at some point they have to, right? You can't do this ad nauseum. The gap between him and Charles Leclerc can't continue like this in perpetuity without the AGM, John Elkann and Frederick Vasseur having to answer some questions. Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc is sprouting his wings. Have a look at what this chap's doing. $11 million yacht. What are we doing here, Charles? Oh, the humanity. Check this one out.
And I will be your flower if you will be the bee. And I promise I will always give you the sweetest parts of me. Cause you're the tip to my top, the key to my lock, you're my breakfast in the morning, you're my up to my down and the king of my crown, and you're everything I want. You got that sweet, sweet, sweet honey, and I want it sweet, sweet honey.
What else do you expect him to do other than leave Scuderia Ferrari? How many years can one man give of their prime in Formula One to the red team with the yellow badge and the black prancing horse atop? Turkey and turkey things. Where would he go though? This is the issue. We're talking driver city season again. Let's assume that Max goes to one of either McLaren or Mercedes. Where does Charles Leclerc go then? Red Bull. The other team. Who switches over? Does Oscar go to... I don't know. It's techie this. It's a Rubik's Cube for which we need to solve. And we'll start to get answers over the course of the summer break. But to that point, let me tell you about the rules. Because the rules, in fact, before I talk about rules, I'm on track. By the way, if we're going to have an Aston Martin conversation, we have to have a rules and regs conversation because we have it underneath the following aegis. They have agreed in 2027 to jack up the extent to which ICE provides power. Tick. However, there's a gazillion different people saying that it's not enough. Gary Anderson's come out and said you had to know F1 if you were sensible and had some common sense that there was always going to be problems as far as these rules and regs. Here's what Gary Anderson writes over at the race. He said, I'm sorry to go over it all again, but the question I would ask is when Formula One's 2026 regulations were put in place, how did anyone think that they could get anywhere near a 50-50 hybrid power split over the course of a lap when using the same size input and output motor, the 350 kilowatt MGU-K to do both? You had the MGU-H before, got rid of that. What are you doing? This doesn't make sense. 5 can't go into 4. This is just simple maths, not even Fermat's last theorem. This is basic arithmetic. Anderson continues. We know that 50-50 was never really true. It was probably more like 370 kilowatts from the ICE and initially 350 kilowatts from the MGU-K. So working on those figures, that means that the MGU-K would supply that level of power from a 4 megajoule battery pack for roughly 11.5 seconds before the torch went out. Looking at the magic of how that was supposed to be possible is where I start scratching my head. It was nonsense. It was stillborn, these 2026 rules, ill-conceived, poorly thought out. And then you get this, of course, yesterday or Thursday even, they had the big meeting and said 2027 it's going to change. We're going to start working towards V8 as of 2030, 2031, said Mohammed bin Sulaim. The 27 thermal engines will return to provide more power, an extra 70 brake horsepower next year, larger fuel tanks, heavier. Understudy is the reduction of aerodynamic load because the faster the cars, and then they're going to reduce aero so that the cars can't go quick through the cars. Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, Lando Norris, you recall, said in order to fix the rules, there is one thing that you need to do. You still can't be flat out everywhere, you said about the cars at Miami. It's not about being as early on the throttle everywhere. You should never get penalised for that sort of things, driving the car like a bandit, and you still do. So honestly, says Lando, I don't really think you can fix that. All you can do is that you have to just get rid of the battery. Hopefully in a few years time that will be the case. And that's why they've enhanced the fuel flow, and that's why they've enhanced ICE. You remember Stefano Domenicali saying F1 has no problem. F1 has lots of problems, sir, lots. And that's why you and Mohammed bin Salem, together with the team principals and all related parties, the drivers, got your heads together and fixed for it. It's not fixed yet, though, per Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, who had this to say about Miami, quote, "No, the rules they changed for the Miami race weekend don't really make much difference to the overall driving experience. My criticism," continues Verstappen, "of the regulations remains exactly the same. It doesn't matter whether I'm running second or eighth. For me personally, our car does feel a bit nicer to drive, but the rules still need to be fixed. Fix your fudging rules." Remember the Max Verstappen naysayer said, well, as soon as his car gets quick, Max Verstappen won't be saying. Max has been saying these things for the past 3 years. He was in the simulator and he saw this coming, amongst others. Mention no names: Carlos Sainz Jr., George Russell and Fernando Alonso. They portended this. So don't act surprised, Stefano. Oh, F1 has no problems. Our survey indicates that all fans have been loving the past few races. Nobody cares about super clipping. Behave yourself. Just because you go on social media don't act, Stefano, like the backlash doesn't exist. Like people in their droves are not cancelling their F1 TV subscriptions and Sky Sports subscriptions too. Oh, and by the way, this article continues that the current split is roughly 55-45 and it will be going potentially to 65-35. However, Max says that what we simply need to move away from is that 55-45 split. We need to go back towards how it was under the previous, back in our day, how it was under the previous hybrid regulations at the very least. If you get back to 75-25 or 80-20 combustion engine, that would really help a lot. Toto issues a warning as he might. Mr. Shareholder, Mr. Manage Expectations. Is that Toto the team principal of Mercedes, or Toto the CEO of Liberty Media? Because I can't tell. Rumour, of course, is that will be his next role. He had this to say: we've got to be careful about coming away from the rules and regs as they are. Electrification is, of course, the future. However, maybe at some point, Toto says, quote, "we can extract 800 horsepower from the ICE and put 400 brake horsepower on top by dint of the electric energy. 1200 brake horsepower F1 cars injected into my veins, Toto." Why weren't these conversations per Gary Anderson had before, though? Toto continues, "We are absolutely up for it as long as these discussions happen in a structured way and people's considerations are taken on board." Let me know what you think about this rule and reg madness. I feel like I'm a bit sick of it now. Just fix your fudging rules. Bit distasteful, says EC. Has been poked tight. Oh yeah, are we going in on Kim K? It's a bit techie, that. And again, you know what? I can't criticise Kim K. He, without sin, cast the first stone. I'm just concerned about Lewis Hamilton and his ability to deliver the 8th. Indeed, maximise for the probability that he can optimise for his performance in 2026. I'm not sure that Kim Kardashian underlines that as much as she double strikes through it. Oh, and by the way, I've got to tell you about this Michael Schumacher story. This is techie. Planet F1 writes, you've got to notice that Mick Schumacher's at Indianapolis this weekend and he qualified. He did in practice, he did a 110.7904 almost 10 years ago to the day. In fact, not 10 years ago, it's much longer than that. What are you talking about? 2002, 24 years ago. Michael Schumacher did a 110.790 around the same track, and again, different configuration. That is bonkers. 110.790 per Planet F1 from Michael Schumacher at the United States Grand Prix. 110.790 as plays Mick Schumacher in 2026 in his Friday practice session. He does a 110.7904. Huh? He's for what? Basically the same as listen, F1 history doesn't rhyme, but sometimes it does repeat. Oh, and by the way, I've got to have a conversation about this because there's a Spanish ex-Mercedes F1 engineer called Josema Galan, and he goes on to a podcast called The Mínimo Común Múltipla on YouTube. It's worth a watch this. So he talks about the process of replacing Sir Lewis Hamilton. He says Toto came into the room and sat everybody down and he started reading out some names. They were going to do a vote by proxy, consensus even. Read out the name that Carlos Sainz, read out a couple of different names. Kimi Antonelli, okay, so he was a bit young, nobody wanted him. Put your hand up if you want Carlos Sainz. Okay, so you get a couple hands. Checo Perez, silence, nobody moves. Crickets, couple other names, nobody really gets. Fernando El Plan Alonso, everybody puts their hand up. I tell you what, stuff of myth and legend this dude is at the moment. You saw him getting his Pagani Zonda a couple of days back. And then today you see him inspecting a Bugatti Tourbillon. There is something about the mythos that's listen, is this me saying that Fernando Alonso, in stark contrast to Lewis Hamilton, can rewind time? There's no way the 2005-2006 Fernando Alonso that won a championship, 2 championships back to back against Michael Schumacher. That's not him anymore. But there is something about this dude. You come to understand him, that his essence is racing. I remember having a conversation with some engineers once upon a time back in my own town in Birmingham, and I was keen then to understand, I want to say about 2007, 2008, maybe a little bit before then. I was keen to understand which one of the drivers is best on the grid, and them to a man all said Fernando Alonso. My follow-up was, why? How do you know? And they all said that Fernando Alonso's racing brain is something different to what they've ever seen, that he knows his splits both in front and behind. He knows plan A, B and C, that he's driving the car and he's 10 steps ahead of everybody else, even his bloody race engineers. You can see that. Remember Hungary? Not to blow his own trumpet, but remember 2007 Hungary. How did Fernando Alonso know the exact amount of time that he needed to very skullduggerously park in the pits in front of Lewis Hamilton, get round to complete a lap, and then prevent Lewis Hamilton from completing a hot lap to the tune of a couple tenths? How's he calculated that, chat? I don't know. And I think it's a shame that Aston Martin are struggling. To which point, a lot of chatter about Aston Martin and these exceptional inaugural 10% ADUO rules. It was announced on Thursday that anyone 10% or more adrift of Mercedes in terms of the power unit performance, they will get themselves some extra benefits. ADUO privilege, that their cost cap will be increased to 8 million. Okay, so they'll be able to spend another 11 million worth of additional spending. $8 million beyond the maximum previously available. So again, their cost cap is getting flexed. The 10% plus category did not previously exist rights to race under the original rules, where the top band specified a performance deficit of 8% or more. The one catch is that the manufacturers who qualify for the new 10% tier will have to repay $8 million of additional spend by reducing their overall cost cap over a 3-year period. But that is fairly theoretical in obligate. I tell you what, this is techie. Let me know how you feel about this. Nobody wins in a world where Aston Martin can't even finish a race. Yeah, they did Miami, but that was the first race of the 4 season to date. It's not a good look for anybody. But what happens next year, chat? When they change the rules, surely you're giving Aston Martin and Honda power unit an advantage going into 2007 if they can spend an extra 11 million on R&D and parts with a view to catch them up now. And what on Audi? Surely Audi, they're not a million miles away from 10% being 10% adrift the market lead. So what about them? Is it formula participation? You get an ADUO and you get an ADUO. I'm not sure how down with that I am, if I'm honest with you, chat. It feels a little bit wrong. Yeah, Aston Martin maybe. But what about Audi? And what about Cadillac F1? Is it the participation Olympics? Is this the participation era of F1? Egalitarian central? Because I don't think that's what it should be, chat. Being honest with you, it feels a little bit weird. It's the Honda rules for ADUO. Oh, how does racing a scoundrel like Alonso get praise? More praise than Sir Lewis. Techie for damn sure. I mean, Alonso is a scoundrel, but again, somebody once said to me, EC, that you should separate the person from the sports personality. Someone once said that, infinitely wiser than me. I'm just talking about you. So, my personal experience. These are what engineers have told me. You're a legend, Safak. I appreciate it. Old Man Stroll has to be, but Old Man Stroll's got to be furious. But they need F1 needs for Aston Martin to get with the program. They can't be languishing. It is a bad deal for everybody. Wagwan Stutter, you're a legend. Grand a 16-1. That's too tempting. What are you talking? Are you talking about Max Verstappen? 16-1. Max Verstappen for the drivers. If you had a car, we're talking, Sebastian, but I just don't think Red Bull are going to do it. Everybody else is developing their car quicker and more efficiently than Red Bull. What about Cadillac once they start building their own power unit? So I think that's only going to come in. So the new rules kick in 2030, 2031. And the chatter was that Cadillac would only have their power unit for the last 2 years of these rules and regs. And that's why Mohammed Ben Salah wanted to have the V8 era kick into place earlier than most manufacturers are ready for. I think they'll all be clambering for it. Orion, it is the truth. Orion, I don't know why I can't. Orion A, I don't know why I can't get the initiation. I think they'll all be clamoring for it, Orion. And this is the issue. Where do you draw the line? Snowflake F1 is like giving out. This is a horse racing handicap now. It's almost becoming balance of performance, isn't it? A little bit, but I don't know what I'm talking about. But how do you differentiate between Cadillac F1, Audi, and Aston Martin? This is where it's going to get controversial. And again, the benchmark, they draw a line under the benchmarks and comparisons after the Canadian Grand Prix up next in a couple of weeks. Oh, and by the way, I've got to talk about Scuderia Ferrari very quickly, because for the longest time I've criticised them, their ability, almost metronomic, to seize defeats from the jaws of victory, that they are experts, or at least have been experts, in failure. Anybody that works with Scuderia Ferrari will tell you over the past couple of years that they've lacked for leadership, inspirational leadership. So too, they've lacked for a working culture in which innovation is encouraged and facilitated, that everybody's looking over their shoulder trying to protect for their job, that there is a protectionist culture over there which inhibits innovation. Now, however, Formula Passion are saying that there is a brand new feeling at Maranello and Fiorano, and that they are reaping the rewards from instituting for a more relaxed atmosphere behind the scenes. Really? I'll believe it when I see it. Ferrari's designers are also said to be now more encouraged to take risks with an openness to them making mistakes. Let's go. That's positive. If that's true, that's very positive. I'm just debating whether it's true. Ferrari reaping the rewards from having a more relaxed atmosphere in Maranello. Ferrari have sought to explore any potential openings in the wording of the 2026 regulations to build Charles and Lewis the best aerodynamic platform and chassis they can. It is also a testament to how Vasseur has developed the atmosphere at Ferrari's factory. Oh, the humanity. How can things change so quickly over there? Do you remember coming into this season, Frederic Vasseur had 5 races. 5 to turn this around, and now all of a sudden they've got the best chassis, the most efficient chassis through the twisties on the grid. If they can get themselves a cheeky 2% ADUO and upgrade their power unit, I mean, maybe they can bridge that gap. I just don't believe. You forgive me, chat. I feel like we've read this book too many times before. Ferrari are always right on the precipice, and then somehow, some way, feels a little bit like 22, and they yet again seize defeat from the jaws of victory. So you forgive me for being a little bit of a Scuderia Ferrari skeptic at this point. When was it last, chap? 2007 drivers, 2008 constructors. Ferrari always the bridesmaids, never the bride. Cameron, what's up, bro? Como estás, amigo? Dorian, Charles Dorian. LMN, you're a legend, mate. Goated LMN, you are an absolute legend. Far too generous. And again, get yourself, if you're a brand new member, get yourself on the community tab and get yourself on the Discord shortly thereafter. It's far too kind. LMN. Ferrari can't get any more relaxed than they were. True, Boris. Ferrari, I'll say it again, they've forgotten how to win. I mean, we were saying the same thing about Mercedes a couple of years ago, right? It felt like they'd forgotten also how to win. But now all of a sudden they've, I suppose the difference, apples and oranges, Cameron Ennie, the difference between Mercedes and Ferrari is that Mercedes has been almost metronomic. 2014 through to 2021, they secured everything. There was no accolades that they didn't win. Now, however, Ferrari It feels like they've been losing so much that they've forgotten how to win. Cam Ferrari are hissing me off 11 upgrades here, but and to that stutter, let me tell you, stutter ranking. It's interesting that you say that. Ferrari can't get enemy. Ferrari, I say it again, they've forgotten how to. So go on and stutter ranking. So there was an article that spoke about this. Again, you remember Ferrari that they were throwing the design philosophy dartboard at the design philosophy darts. It's not the way you iterate for things. You can't bring. How do you know then? Ferrari, if you've bought 11 upgrades, the Max Serena wing, a cheeky front wing, side pods and bloody engine cover. If you bought all these things, how do you know then which of those upgrades has actually worked? Which of them is worth actual downforce points and aerodynamic effect? You won't know. You've got to go back and start taking them off and trying them on. Like, do you know what I mean? It smacks again of some sort of Shakespearean false seeming. That like Ferrari always want to do, that in FP1, 2 and 3, they want to see their car at the top of the timing sheet. Same way in testing, you know that it's all a little bit performative, sans substance. But again, we are checking, says the Jack. They are always checking. Ferrari always know how to bottle it. I feel for Charles and Louis. So go on then, Safat, let me leverage this. And again, I'll get destroyed by Charles Leclerc fans for saying this. Is it just Ferrari though? Didn't Charles Leclerc make a cheeky mistake of the unforced variety? Sorry, I called him Charles Leclerc then, didn't I? Sorry, I mean modern day journal lazy. Did you see, by the way, at the automobile show at Monaco the other day that Charles Leclerc's his lookalike Charles Lazy yeeted some old cars into the barriers as well. Bloody Nora. So Lewis is what Ferrari needs to create a winning culture. Charles Leclerc hasn't moved the needle in over 6 years. Go on then, EC. Make this fact. I'm going to try and argue, but I understand that Lewis Hamilton, when he gets to Canada, will know how to set up a car. Like, he's the winningest driver around Canada, isn't he? He gets it. But then surely you take that winning formula and you give it to Charles Leclerc now, EC. If you understand that past his prologue and that last year Charles Leclerc dunked on Sir Lewis head to the tune of 86 points in the driver's standards. EC, how could you be an engineer and not want to be on Charles Leclerc's side of the garage? He's going to bring home the bacon. I feel like we've seen I'll say this again, EC, it's sad. I feel like we might have already seen the best of Sir Lewis this year. Chinese Grand Prix. I don't know. Ferrari. That says enough. Good luck, Lewis and Charles. 100% Safa. It's going to get tacky. Ferrari. Who needs Audi and Cadillac over Aston Martin, Jordan GP? Says PB. Year after year, we're producing a great car, sometimes capable of winning the WC. Trackside team forever screwing up the strategy. They're just not very nimble and agile as far as a racing team, as you'd expect, right? You want them to be making decisions. You want the racing engineers to have all the key numbers and KPIs right at their fingertips, and they just don't. They haven't, and I think that makes me feel sad. What have the Tifosi done to deserve this, apart from support their team ad nauseum in perpetuity? Dr. Labez, excuse me, says year after year we produce. I've read that already. But Max and Charles, the best drivers in F1 right now, both spin with a car at the same GP. I'm calling it. These cars are unstable. And I don't hate it, mate. I don't hate it. Driver errors, says Afsal, plain and simple. Go on, and let me tell you about David Coulthard and Max and Ferrari. On his podcast, David Coulthard said this. He does feel, though, that although Mercedes has come away with the Grand Prix victory, that the gap has definitely closed between them and the rest. And Max, in typical fighting style, even when it was inevitable, when Charles got past him, and then George as well, because they were running faster, they were on your fresher tyres, that he would never give an inch. Max Verstappen would not. And it's great to see him not give an inch. But the freedom to be Max, I think he'd be more comfortable fit at Ferrari because... What? David Coulthard. DC, why are we just talking to say words? Like, what do I need? Max, you mean to tell me that you think Max's culture, who Max is would be a better fit for the culture at Ferrari? What have you, like, what? Incorrect, sir. And I know DC's a god tier one and he's infinitely more connected to the Red Bull circumstance than I. But to say that, to encourage for Max to go to Ferrari, he says that you just turn up, drive quickly, presumably win races, and then head home. What? I think Max fits better in with Ferrari, with the Ferrari world, than the Mercedes world. That is insane. I know that they have this good relationship. And I know that he's racing in Mercedes at the GT3. But I tell you what, the problem is this, DC. If you're talking about apex predator priorities, all that Max wants to be, Max isn't going to say, oof, I think Mercedes have got the quickest car. However, they expect a little bit too much from me in terms of sponsorship. You go over there and you work all that stuff out in freestyle, right? 8 mile, 8 rabbit settings. You need to be at the team that has the quickest car and will have the quickest car over the duration of your contract. Everything else fades to black. It's lost in the roundings. DC cultural fit. You think Max cares about that? Going to go over there. Most of them teams, Zach Brown and Toto will give that chap a check and a pen and have him write down his number and all of his stipulations. That's how keen they are to sign. I don't know what DC's talking about here. But again, sometimes you've got to say some controversial-ish to fill some pages where there's nothing else going on. Safet, you're too kind as always. DC is in between a rock and a hard place, working for Sky and Red Bull. Does DC work for Sky, John? I think DC works for Channel 4, if I recall correctly. DC really hates Max. Does he? I thought he was a bit... I don't know. I can't see any real take from DC. I just think he's not even thinking. He hasn't engaged his brain. And I like myself some DC. I loved DC with EJ on the FFS podcast. DC is still butthurt. He retired a year early. And his ride went to Vettel, who went on to win 4 days probably. Max at Ferrari's like ordering pizza Hawaii. Pizza Hawaii in Napoli. Michael got everybody to follow him. Why don't they follow Max? Emo. Can we play hypothetical games for a second? What if they've already preempted? What if this is chaos. Indulge me for a second here, chat. What if GP and Will Courtenay and Robert Marshall have gone to McLaren, knowing the future destination of Max Verstappen? I just cannot help but think. I don't know. I can't imagine a world where GP and Max hadn't had the conversation already that I'm potentially... I don't know. Max only a couple of years ago said he wasn't... Yeah, as soon as GP leaves, I'm going to leave. And you mean to tell me that GP went to McLaren blind? Well, I don't know, chat. Oh, and by the way, as we round third, I need to tell you about Mark Webb, who's had some things per Racing News 365 to say about one Maximilian Verstappen. And this is important for a couple of different reasons. You've heard Stefano Domenicali do his best spiel, his best F1 pitch book, talking about F1. There's nothing to see here. There are no problems. Well, here are the problems in real time. You can survey as few fans as you want to, mate, and colour the stat book. Yeah, you can. But ultimately, women lie, men lie. Numbers do not ever. The numbers look something like this. You saw the first quarter results that they were advertising gangbusters. However, over the same period, we've had 3 races as versus 2 races last year. So the 600 million that they reported in top line revenue, normalised for the fact that we've had 3 races as versus 2, goes back to as near as makes no difference, the same number that it was last year. That's 400 million. So tell me now that you're improving and all this, everything's gangbusters and there are no problems in F1. Well, the numbers say different. If you check out the market capitalization of F1, it's not where it was 6 months ago. I'll tell you that for free. And ultimately, these are the conversations that they'll be having at the next annual general meeting, won't they, Stefano Domenicali? Difficult conversations. Yeah, you can tell us that everybody loves this unique brand of F1. But again, there are pinch points, one of which, again, if the numbers are the numbers and we are where we are, stasis quarter on quarter or year on year in quarter one, then what you cannot afford is to have the jewel in the F1 crown, the best driver in the world, some say, by dint of his performance, not just in F1, but GT3 and now GT500 cars. You can't have the best driver in the world leave and then you advertise yourself as the best series in the world. That would be disingenuous, evidensibly incorrect. F1, by the way, worth around 23 billion. Earlier this year, I want to say it was worth 23.5 billion. So again, not going gangbusters if we're talking about market capitalization. And then you need to tell me that Max Verstappen, the risk that this chap leaves is here, has never been greater. Well, Mark Webber comes out and states the obvious, that what Formula One cannot afford to do, especially not by dint of the noddy decision making of the FIA at the altar of the rules and regs. What they can't afford to happen is for Max Verstappen to leave. It's getting techie here, and Mark Webber speaks to it. He says that Max has earned the right to decide his future. If he feels he's starting to lose motivation, as he said a gazillion times this year, given the success that the Red Bull man has had and the issues he's now facing, but F1 cannot afford to let Max Verstappen go as he lifts every driver to higher standard. It's like Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer. That comparison is very apropos. Telling you can't afford to lose your best ones. If Rafa is not there, Roger is lifting, and vice versa. You need someone who is giving you those sleepless nights, and Max Verstappen has done that for a long period. Who next? Who's coming after Max that's going to keep you dialed into Formula One? Charles Leclerc, kind of. Charles not there yet. I don't think he's attracting the mainstream dollar, if I'm being honest. I just don't think it's the... Jimmy Kimmel didn't want to have a conversation with Charles Leclerc because he didn't know who he was. It is Max Verstappen, full stop, new paragraph. Webber continues saying, quote, naturally, Red Bull would love for Max Verstappen to stay. That's incredibly easy to predict. Holistically, looking at the whole sport, when you've got someone like him, characters like Verstappen, are what the sport needs. Touche. No kidding, Sherlock. You've got to keep, especially now that the state of play is so tightly wound, yeah, I feel like we're on the proverbial seesaw. We're at a tipping point as far as F1 is concerned, and its popularity in 26 and its ability to kick on and grow, get and keep brand new attention dollars. Webber continues, we need these people. People switch on the TV because of Max Verstappen, and Liberty knows that. Teams know that he's important. Of course he is. Did you see what happened when he went across the GT3? NLS. Hundreds of thousands of views where nobody would ordinarily watch. A rising Max Verstappen tide, therefore, suffice to say, floats all motorsport boats. Mark Webber is right. Continues, it's really important that we keep Max in the sport because he's lifting every driver in the field, and that's what Formula One is about. You have to be continually lifted. To be more precise with language, Max Verstappen, if you advertise yourself as the best, the premier motorsport formula in the world, proper upper echelons, therefore you need yourself the best drivers. And if Max Verstappen decides to do one of these because you guys won't fix your fudging rules, then there can be no more damning indictment than that. That's where it gets techier than tacky things. And that's why Stefano needs to admit in the first instance that Houston, we have ourselves a problem, in order to shortly thereafter fix for it. What are we doing? Yeah.